Okay, welcome back. My name is Howard Eber. I am still an alcoholic. When I came back from my last relapse in 2006, my life was saved largely because of the people I was exposed to. I listened to Joe and Charlie, and Joe and Charlie took me to other people like Chris Schroeder and Myers Raymer and Chris Raymer and Mark Houston and Joe Hawk and so many others. And one of the many great things to come out of COVID is that a lot of those people who are still around have become friends. And I am so honored to be able to introduce to you my friend, Myers Raymer.
Thank you. Thank you, Howard. I, well, I am as stupid as I look. Okay. I got to own my last week's deal. Guys, I don't think I've ever in all my almost 70 years on this earth, have I ever been as embarrassed as I was last week. I flat just missed the whole, in my head. I said 6:00 and I was outside working in the garden. And I thought, well, I still got 2 hours, and then came in and realized that I had messed it up big. And anyhow, my apologies. It was a long week thinking about seeing all y'all. And it's funny. I love talking about sponsorship. I love talking about 12-step work and carrying the message more than maybe anything in AA. But in all fairness, with as much transparency as I can put out there, I think I've probably made more mistakes, especially early on in the areas of sponsorship. And they talk about learning from your mistakes. And sometimes we do. If you make enough of them and you fall enough times, you'll eventually figure out what's going on. And I was fortunate enough to have some folks like Cliff Bishop, my sponsor, who was sponsored by Joe McQuaney of Joe and Charlie. And so there was a lot of help coming through these older guys that were beneficial. There used to be an old saying that was, we teach what we're taught. And it's the truth. And it all depends on where you were raised in AA land. So I want to take just a few seconds to make me a little, disclaimer. If you're working with folks, rock on. If you're doing it a different way and it seems to be working, and rock on. I mean, my job is not to move you a particular way or not, but sometimes I think my job is to help you see that there are some other options that are out there, because that was what was so surprising. In the early days, I had no understanding of the basic text. We didn't, in the group I sobered up in, we didn't read the big book. We sort of did every once in a while, but I didn't. 7 years into the program, I still haven't read the book. I still have not sponsored anybody. So the idea of sponsorship was more about trying to be hip, slick, and cool. What can I say that might make you smile or might make you laugh or might make you, I don't know. I wanted to sound witty. And I thought that was my goal. I don't know. It was so crazy. 2 years after I got connected up with Cliff and those big book guys, and I decided to stay in that group in Dallas. I'm 2 years into that deal, and I still have never sponsored anybody. Now, I remember a lady one time, she said, we were having this conversation, and she said, "Oh, you get to travel so much with AA stuff." And so I bet it's really fun. And I said, "Well, it is. It is." And she said, I bet you get to see some really cool AA. And I said, I do. And then I smiled at her and I said, and some not so cool AA. And she goes, whoa, whoa, whoa. Now, AA is the same all over the world, isn't it? And I went, it depends on where you were raised. It depends on the culture of the group that you're in. Listen, I've never, ever been in a room of alcoholics that weren't the coolest people in the universe. I've always enjoyed being in those rooms. But sometimes the culture of those rooms, like my original home group, was full of nice people. and we shared our experience, strength, and hope, but we didn't ever really share anything out of the basic text. And so there were a lot of opinions. There were a lot of ideas. There were a lot of things that were going on. And so my head was full of those ideas. I remember a guy, kind of an iconic AA guy in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, that came over to our group and was sharing one night. And he said, you know, they have good 12-steppers and bad 12-steppers. And if you're not really good at this, you probably ought to just let somebody else do it. And I got to tell you, I mean, this guy told some funny jokes. He was kind of funny to be around and this sort of thing. And I wanted to just hug the guy because he took away every bit of that stuff that made me feel uncomfortable, because I already know I'm too stupid to sponsor, I'm too busy to sponsor, you just fill in the blank. And I bet you that there's some of you in here that have played that game too, that you've kind of distanced yourself from the idea of sponsorship. And hopefully we can talk about some stuff that'll maybe make you excited to kind of move back that direction. I know this because I've sponsored so many men over the years who have been in the rooms for a long time. But when you ask them about sponsorship, they go, you know, like, whoa, I don't do that. I got a guy right now that I'm sponsoring that's 17 years sober, and he's sponsored one guy in 17 years. And I don't think that's going to fly. And it explains why this guy is a walking dumpster fire, why he's just struggling all the time, because this idea of work and self-sacrifice for others. He's not there at all. So we'll talk a little bit about that stuff. In the early days of AA, and I won't get into a bunch of history because we don't have the time really, but in the early days of our program, most everything that was transmitted was done in writing. The big books were sent all over, and then people would talk back and forth some, but the basic text was the baseline of what it was that we were teaching. And as we've grown and as we've moved from that written piece of stuff to just this oral idea, and the oral idea can be pretty confusing, again, depending on where you are and who's teaching you and what it is that you're learning. I'm not here to criticize anybody. But I sense the longer I talk with people in the rooms, some people have had amazing success with sponsorship and with trying to help others, and some people haven't. And a lot of times it comes back to that baseline stuff. I think sometimes it's fun to kind of look at the book and see what it is that sets us up. I think a common thread that runs through every one of us in this room this evening is the idea that we all have opinions and ideas, and we all have different ways of presenting what it is that we need to present, which is a cool thing. That's a good thing. But I think sometimes the overall problem is that we've not moved back towards that baseline of what is fact, what is written in the basic text. If we're either going to let the text set that line or we're not. And if we're not, we're likely to get off into the weeds. If you've got a big book, I had one a minute ago. There it is. Grab your big book and look over on page 17. Bill Wilson talks about a common solution on this stuff. And I want to read just a couple of things to get us set up here where we're going with I'm 2/3 of the way down the page. The feeling of having shared in a common peril is one element in the powerful cement which binds us. Your story, if I just met Al Green, and Al Green's talking to me like this, he's going to tell me a little piece of his story, and I'm going to smile at him, and I'll tell you a little piece of mine like this, and he'll shake his head yes like this, and there'll be something passed between us. Bill's telling us this, how important this is. But look at the next line, though. He just kind of he kind of bitch slaps you with this. But that in itself would never have held us together as we are now joined. Oh, wait a minute. I thought it was all about the stories. I thought that was what it was. And Bill's saying, well, hold on, Hoss. It might not be. Look at the next line. the tremendous fact for every one of us is that we've discovered a common solution. Well, so the common solution is the first 164 pages. It's the text. This is the reason why I'm so enamored with book studies, and I get so irritated sometimes with discussion hell that takes us off into a deal. Not because those things don't need to be talked about, but because they're so full of confusion. There's just so many things that come up out of there. And so let me be clear what I'm talking about. Pretend you're in a meeting and you're new and you're just sitting there listening like this. And Bina starts sharing, and Bina says, I got me a new sponsor, and she's got me working through the work in a fairly quick way. It's kind of a timely, we're going to do it pretty quick and get on through it. In 50, 60 days, we ought to be through it. And then Arlene is in there, and God love y'all. Y'all just happen to be, I'm looking right at you. Sorry. And Arlene's in the room. And so Arlene goes, well, my sponsor, we're going to work one step a month, and maybe we'll be done in a year. Okay. Now which one of those things lines up with the basic text? Well, Bina's on the right track, and Arlene, I love you to death, but I think maybe you may be in trouble. We're going to have to scratch around and get you moving a little bit quicker, because the text talks. I mean, when the text uses this, next we launched out on a course of vigorous action, and there's a dozen other places in there where they're moving next. They're trying to get us to go through this kind of stuff because, y'all, time is not your friend. We may think it is. We may talk ourselves. We will try to rationalize it that way. But time, as from my experience, is not my friend. The longer I sit with things, stop and think about this. How many of y'all have ever done inventory with people and you got them started and you let them have their just as long as you want to take? Just let me know when you get done with your inventory. And 6 months later, they're still not finished. And a year later, they're still not finished. We see this all the time. And you finally say, we got to do this. If you let me sit with this stuff long enough, what I'll end up doing is just justifying and rationalizing a lot of stuff out of the picture. I don't know them in amends. I don't know them in amends. I'm working overtime trying to get clear of anything I have to do that makes me feel uncomfortable. Anyway, it's just one of those things. We'll talk a little bit about it in a minute. Flip over to page 19, the very next page on there. Look at the 2/3 of the way back down that page. I think it's important to see this. It's funny doing restoration work on people's big books, which is what I do for a living. I never see this marked in people's books. I look pretty regular, but I never see it marked in there like that. We've concluded to publish an anonymous fellowship volume setting forth the problem as we see it. We shall bring to the task our combined experience and knowledge. In 1948, the Grapevine magazine came up with Experience, Strength, and Hope, and that sort of just kind of came into the picture like this. The problem I've got with that thing is that it took knowledge out of the picture. In the early days of AA, they expected us to understand the basic text. They expected us to do that. I've sponsored dozens of men who've never read the big book and have been in the rooms for years. I'm not judging them. I'm just saying, and if you go back and look at chapter 7, working with others like that, before they make the second visit, they insist that he read the book. Knowledge is important, y'all. It's important that we understand it. Look at how many times Bill Wilson and the first 100 refer us back to chapter 2 and chapter 3 in the big book. Over and over again, 5 times that I've counted. They refer us back to that chapter because they want us to understand the nature of the disease. If you can't explain what alcoholism is, you're going to have a really hard time teaching it and helping other people through it. It's important that we understand that. I'm the poster boy of not knowing that. I'm 10 years in this program and I can't explain what alcoholism is. And it's no wonder that I was struggling so much. The worst time of my entire life was in AA, 7 years sober, and not having any experience with that stuff. The other piece of that stuff, if we go to, I'll tell you what, we'll flip over there real quick. Turn to page 89, and then I'll get out of the book. that little introductory piece of working with others. We're going to circle back and talk about that here in just a minute. Practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. It works when other activities fail. And I'm going to come back and we're going to talk about that thing. But this idea of intensive work with other alcoholics is such a big deal. How many of y'all have ever read those letters? There's a series of letters that Bill Wilson wrote that was later published in the Grapevine that were from 1966. I want to read this, and there should be no. The only reason I'm reading this is because I want there to be no gray area around our direction of kind of where we're headed with this stuff. In this letter, it said, an AA group as such cannot take on all the personal problems of its members, let alone those of non-alcoholics in the world around us. The AA group is not, for example, a mediator of domestic relations, nor does it furnish personal financial aid to anyone. How many of y'all have ever in sponsorship land kind of got off the chain and off the track and headed off into, I'm a life coach and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. Pretty soon you're trying to be a counselor or you're trying to be all these things like that. And Bill Wilson's trying to get us to understand that we may come to the table with some of those skills, but that is not our responsibility. That's not the baseline he's trying to set. It goes on a little bit farther. Though a member may sometimes be helped in such matters by his friends in AA, the primary responsibility for the solutions of all of his problems of living and growing rests squarely upon the individual himself. Now, should an AA group attempt this sort of help, its effectiveness and energies would be hopelessly dissipated. Been there, done that. That I get it. And then he closes with this. This is why sobriety, freedom from alcohol through the teaching and practice of AA's 12 steps is the sole purpose of the group. If we don't stick to this cardinal principle, we shall almost certainly collapse. And if we collapse, we cannot help anyone. Yeah. Y'all following me? What I'm saying? I mean, it's easy to get, I can tell by a lot of your faces that y'all aren't digging this at all. I know the meeting is about love. I know the meeting is about other things. I know that it's about fellowship and camaraderie and all the other stuff. But my responsibility is to snag John Conley when he walks into a room and help him. My job, that's my job. My job is to help him understand the basic text so that he can get to this place where he can have this relationship with his creator as quickly as I possibly can. His recovery does not depend on Myers. I don't want that responsibility, y'all. But I want to be able to help him find his relationship with God as quickly as I can. And that is my responsibility. I need to be clear on that stuff. 1944, Bill wrote this little piece. Our chief responsibility to the newcomer is an adequate presentation of the program. Wow. I mean, I'm 7 years in the rooms. I don't even understand the program. How can I carry that to somebody else? You see, we filled in the blanks with all the weird little aphorisms. Just think. Meeting makers make it. All this. Say it all you want to. But I'm telling you right now, I'm going to 6 meetings a week and I'm a suicidal hot mess at 7 years in these rooms. And I've talked to untold numbers of men over the years who were in exactly that same kind of situation. I love me a meeting. I want you to go to as many as you can possibly do. But I got to tell you, the moment you move the meeting to the center of your program, you're moving in a direction that's going to be troublesome on down the road. That's just the observation of a crusty old bastard from Central Texas. I see it all the time. I would much rather that you as quickly as possible connect up the dots that the meeting is indeed important, but there's so much more in terms of the transformative experience that happens as we work these steps, that should be probably the center of our gig. It's got to be 20 years ago now. I did a workshop in Kent, England, there's probably 200 men in this convent, right outside of Kent. And it was sort of a surreal experience. Just amazing. Besides the fact that it was one of the prettiest things I'd ever seen flying over that countryside over there. It's just sort of amazing. And we had a great workshop that was going, and I kept hearing things though in breaks that from people that were talking that didn't line up with anything. And so I got this idea, and I said, I tell you what, guys, we're going to take a fast break. And then when we come back, I'm going to pass out a little card to you and a little stubby pencil. And we're going to talk about the steps for a second. And so they took a break. And when they came back, I passed out these little cards. And I said, guys, this isn't complicated at all. But what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to write down the first 3 things you would do if you met a brand new guy in the room and you were just going to try to help it. What 3 things would you do? Now, my goal, what I was trying to do in this situation, is get some clarity so there wouldn't be this confusion. And so I asked these guys before they started writing, I said, how many of y'all have a pretty clear picture about what you would do before when you first started working with somebody? And there's 200 men looking at me, and they're all shaking their head. Yes, they got it. They got it. And I said, okay, well, write down the first 3 things. Y'all write it down. And 2 guys picked up a pencil, and I couldn't see anybody else in the room that even picked the pencil up. They were just looking at me, and I went, interesting. And so we started talking about this piece because there was so much, there was obviously so much confusion. It's easy to go, hey, I got this. I understand this. It's easy for my ego to say, Myers, you've been in the room for 10 years, for crying out loud. You got this. But when it comes down to black and white on a piece of paper and you're trying to write the stuff down, it got complicated because people didn't get it. And so this guy said, well, it's obvious we're not clear on this. And I said, I know, let's talk about that. And I said, the very first thing that I would do, and y'all can write it down there if you want to, is qualify people. Qualify. Bill Wilson was clear in chapter 7, and then they mention it again in the family afterwards. They're talking about it in the chapter of the employer. Flip back over to page 44. Of all of the things in the big book, and there's tons of it that help us qualify, I think the clearest and the cleanest little piece of stuff is that first paragraph in We Agnostics. If when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, or there's a little comma there. It's one sentence, but it's separated by that or if when drinking you have little control of the amount you take, you're probably alcoholic. Now hold your finger right there. Just listen, just a second. So there's 2 things that Bill's asking that refer to choice and control. You see, if we go to story stuff, oh, I'm an alcoholic because I got a DWI. Oh, really? Guys, there are thousands of people that get DWIs that are not alcoholic. They drank too much and got in the car and drove, and there it is. I mean, it's not a qualifier to get a DWI. Oh, my wife left me and I lost my job, and super. It is not a qualifier. That's the drama. But look how clear he made it like that. If when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely. You ever tell your loved ones, I'm never going to do this again? And then 3 weeks later, you find yourself driving home with a beer can between your legs? That is a qualifier. That's what we're trying to see. And the other one, the other side of that, if when drinking, you have little control of the amount you take. All right, Londa, I'm going to come home. I'm telling her right now, I'm going to stop off. I'm going to drink a beer with the guys, and then I'm coming home and eat dinner. And then I drink 3 beers or 5 beers or 10 beers or whatever. You see, that's the qualifier. Do you do what you say you're going to do? And this is a big thing. Now go back to where we stopped. If that be the case, you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer. I want to let you in on a little secret. It took me a while to see it. It didn't say, if that be the case, you may be suffering from an illness which only 90 meetings in 90 days will conquer. It didn't say that. And so you gotta kind of pay attention to it and see it, which only a spiritual experience will conquer. So my focus should be, how do I get from point A train wreck to point B, having a spiritual experience as a result of this stuff. How do I do that? And that's what my primary job is in the whole thing. The second thing I would do when I'm qualifying people, and I've qualified dozens and dozens of men sitting on the tailgate of my pickup before a meeting, just visiting. Never met them before. We're just talking about something. And I'm going to ask a simple question like that. Tell me about God. What's your idea of God? Do I have an atheist? Just need to know in the big picture. I don't need to know a lot of details. Am I dealing with an atheist? Am I dealing with an agnostic? Am I dealing with somebody that's struggling with a past situation? These are all things that are important to know. And the third piece of this thing that I think is important, this just gives me a starting place with them. And the third thing that I would always ask, are you willing to go to any length? Because the book asked me to ask that. Are you willing to go to any length? And I need to define that. I need to talk to people about what that looks like. And it's like a define the relationship thing. Guys, we have tens of thousands of men and women coming into our fellowship every year. Tens of thousands of people coming in. And yet we assume that they're going to pick up pieces of this. How many of y'all have heard people say, well, it used to be my favorite line. If you hang around long enough, you'll hear what you need to hear. You might, but you might not. That's the scary part. And so I think I would rather have the conversation about what that looks like. And so years and years ago, Chris was writing this thing out, and we started playing with it over the years like that. And this is just a simple list of things that take us about maybe 15 or so minutes to talk about it like that. But I have this document and am delighted to send it to you if it will help in any way. But I give it to every man that I sponsor. And it's a short list of some things that I think are important for them to understand about what sponsorship looks like and what my responsibilities are and what their responsibilities are. It's not complicated at all. But because there's so much other information coming into them, I want to at least let them know where we stand on it like that. The first one on this, are you willing to be qualified? Page 20, 21, 44. This conversation about the hard drinker and the real alcoholic. I think that we need to understand, because the Bill Wilson and those folks had stressed how important it was that you understood the nature of your disease. There's a guy named Paul Fisher out in Arizona that years ago wrote a little article. And I'll be glad to send that article to you too. It's one of the clearest pieces of information about step one. What I want you to do is to be clear and understand that you have a chronic situation that is serious enough that you are destined to either be locked up or die because of the progressive nature of the disease. This isn't just you making a bunch of bad decisions over and over and over again. Well, eventually I'll stop making bad decisions. Well, if you just stop on your own, you might not be one of us. This is the reason I want to clarify all this stuff. The second piece of this stuff, are you willing to go through the steps quickly? Y'all, this drives some people nuts. I completely understand it. I just have to say, time is not your friend in some of this stuff. Let me give you a fast example. How many of y'all have ever done H&I work or carried the message to a treatment center or a wind-up joint or a transitional living place where you met somebody that was brand new sober and they were unbelievably willing to do whatever? I mean, you'd hand them a hairy spider and say, here, eat this. And they'd say, okay, it's just, they'll whatever it takes. That's what willingness looks like. But then you see them 2 weeks later and they're chilling in the back of the room and they're not looking at you and they really don't give a rat's rear anymore. They got it worked out. Guys, Myers, I got this. I got a bad girlfriend. I kicked her to the curb and I'm going to find me another fine girlfriend and everything is going to be fine. Guys, I've heard this I couldn't count how many times I've heard men talk about this stuff. I just needed a new pickup and I'll be okay. I'll just, whatever. the book moves in a timely fashion. I'm not trying to shove the steps up anybody. I'm not trying to make them do something that they don't want to do. But if you're motivated, then I want us to move as quickly as we can, so that we can get you to this sweet spot where you realize that the obsession has gone. And now I'm beginning to awaken every day to this idea of how cool it is to get off my scrawny rear and go help somebody, to change lives, to do something that affects that sort of change. This is huge, huge stuff. If all you're doing is trying to go to enough meetings and that's what's trying to keep you sober, you might make it for a while. I'm not saying it's a dead end road, but I am saying that you might find yourself in the same situation that a lot of us have, where you cannot stand the meetings anymore. You don't want to be there anymore, because the meeting itself is not treating that internal condition that the spiritual experience was designed to do. So y'all can kind of just figure out what you want to do on that one. Are you willing to attend specific meetings early on? If I'm sponsoring you, y'all don't have to follow this. If I'm sponsoring you, I don't want you to go to any meetings except literature-based meetings until we get through the steps, which is going to take about 50 days, 40 days if we're lucky, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less than that, but never more than that, unless there's some travel problems or something that gets in the way. Here's the reason why. If it's in a literature meeting, then I can pretty much guarantee that 100% of the things that you're hearing are based on the steps and the experience of the first 100. If you're going to a different, let's say you're going to just an open discussion meeting and then you're going to a literature-based meetings, and I've sponsored tons of people that do that, it's an amazing deal how that happens, how people will get confused, and we have a natural tendency to go down the path that's easier to go down. So this old guy named Myers is going to want me to do step work and read the big book and do this stuff. And these over here just want me to sit and enjoy the day. I think I'll do that. Well, you see what I'm saying? For just later, you can go to any meeting you want to. I have no control over that. But early on, I would prefer that you would hang with us in our book studies until we get through that stuff. Number 4 on that list, are you willing to focus on just the big book for a little while? Just a little one, just until we get through the steps. And then after you get through the steps, jump into the 12 and 12 and jump into the history books and jump into a bunch of other stuff. But early on, it can be really, really, confusing, going back and forth between books. Are you willing to be completely honest about the things that are important? Sex checks, medication. I need to know kind of what's going on, guys, on that. As your sponsor, I'm going to be real quiet about what you tell me. But I need to know if you're on medications. I need to know. We're not going to talk about it in public like that, but it affects some of this stuff. Not all of it, but some of it does. I've sponsored lots and lots of people. I work with a lot of people coming out of the military that are in rehab, and they're struggling with all kinds of outside issues, and they're on lots of medication for PTSD stuff. And I need to know that stuff. Sex, I just need to know what's going on. Is sex a problem for you or it's not? Money, are you broke? Do you have some will? I just need to know kind of what's going on, and we'll find out. It helps to be clear on that. Are you willing to be open-minded about anonymity? Are you okay about telling people that you're in recovery? Sometimes if you don't have anything else to do and you're tired of watching reruns of Storage Wars or something, go Google Dr. Bob's comments on the 11th tradition, and you can print it out. It's just 2 paragraphs long, but it's an amazing paragraph where he talks about we're not supposed to be anonymous to ourselves. How many of y'all have been in rooms with people that you've known for 20 years and you still don't know their last name? It happens all the time. And so we're not supposed to be anonymous to each other. That's the reason why my name up on my thing is always my whole name. Cause I want you to know who I am if you need me. Myers is a weird name. You could track me down like that. But what if it was Joe and I just had it up there? We might have trouble, going through there. Are you willing to take a service commitment now? I'm a huge fan, and so was Bill Wilson in the first 100, of getting as busy as we can to take a service commitment to carry a message. My home group in Dallas, before we moved to Kerrville in Central Texas 2 years ago, we had 52 commitments a week to carry the message other places, besides our 3 meetings a week, our 3 book studies a week. 52 commitments. And they were absolutely transformative. It was the magic like nothing I've ever seen, to go to a place, carry a clear message, and watch people's lives change because you were willing to take the time to do that. That's what work and self-sacrifice begins to look like. We all have good intentions, but if I can tell my guys, hey, you're going to be with me carrying the message within another week or two, then I can they haul them with me, help them get accustomed to it. And it's a great teaching opportunity. Are you willing to be accountable in all 3 parts of AA? That's unity, service, and recovery. We know we're going to be in the group, but there's also this idea of working the steps and then service work. I want to be in all 3 parts if I expect to stay sober. Are you willing to learn the traditions? I'm blown away by how many men that I've worked with that don't know the traditions and don't have any interest in learning the traditions. And yet the traditions in some ways is far more important in the bigger picture of our fellowship than anything is, because it all goes back to the idea of unity. What is it that holds thousands and thousands of dumpster fires together? What is it that holds us in one place and keeps us together? It's sort of an amazing deal. Almost done, y'all. Willing to take guidance about meeting etiquette. I think it's my responsibility to let you know it is not okay to come to a meeting and treat it like it's a pickup bar where you can lean on every girl in the room. We ain't playing that game. This is life and death for so many of us. And you're going to follow a little protocol there. You're going to be kind and pay attention to what you're doing. How are you dressed? Are you trying to dress so provocative that you're a distraction? See it all the time like that. I think etiquette is something that's important. Etiquette around traditions, around seventh tradition, around, thank the speaker, it's important to understand what it is that we're supposed to do. And that's part of my job. And the last one on this thing that seems to drive people crazy, are you willing to look at your health? There's so many men that I've known that have come into these rooms that have not done anything other than head to a dope house or drink themselves silly or whatever like that. And one of the things that I think is a huge help is I'm going to try to help the men that I work with to understand that if you'll get out and walk a little bit every day, if you'll, I'm a runner and have been for 30 some odd years now. And running is like church for me. I absolutely love being out there. But I think it's important to help people understand that as you get clear of the addiction, maybe it's time to look at the other things that you've neglected. Some of the things, from a health standpoint. Let me mention something real quick from my perspective of being in these rooms. There's only two things that I cannot give you. I've known Bina forever, and I would do anything to help her, but there's 2 things that I can't give her at all. One is willingness, and one is gratitude. And so I'm hypersensitive. If I was working with Bina, I'm real sensitive to what she manifests, how she manifests willingness. Is she still willing to show up, willing to do things, willing to help others, people like that? Is that willingness still there? It's fleeting, y'all. It doesn't just come and stay forever. It'll move sideways in a heartbeat like that. And the other one is gratitude. We just had a big gratitude breakfast yesterday where we cooked for 50 or 60 people and had this big gratitude meeting with breakfast. And I'm amazed at how many people, started smiling after the meeting and go, I haven't thought about that stuff in forever, about how much I should be grateful for. Y'all ever realize how lucky we are that we got clear of this unbelievably nasty situation that was destined to kill us or get us locked up? And we got clear of it. And we because we did, we were able to get involved in so much and actually be a part of life. These are great things to do. Let me mention two quick things. One, in sponsorship land, y'all, it's okay to say, I don't know. I know that some of this is going to drive you crazy like that, but I mean, that was the hardest thing for me to learn, that there are things that people ask me and I don't know. And so I learned to say the things that freed me up, and which were, I don't know, or let me get back to you. I don't have to have an answer for everything like that. And some of us get twisted up in that, and we let our pride kind of get involved in that kind of stuff. Oh, I'm supposed to know that. I've been sober for 30 years. I get people ask me stuff every week that I don't know, and I have to just get back to them and let them know. And that's okay. And lastly, one of the things that I think there's a common thread that runs through all of us, that at certain points in our recovery, we learn certain things. I mean, we kind of click, and then we go, Lee, I never saw that before. And now I see that. One of the ones that really got me in the fields, it made me emotional when I finally connected, was when I was having a conversation with Joe McQuaney one morning at a breakfast deal, and we were sitting there, and he said, Myers, I'm concerned about you. He said, son, you've been in these rooms now for what, 12, 13 years at that time? And I said, yes, sir. And he said, my read on you is that you're still a taker. And I went, what? No, dude, nuh-uh. And I'm trying to defend my position on that kind of stuff. And he said, no, listen to me just a second, Myers. He said, when you go to a meeting, it's like you're there trying to get something from everybody that's there. You're trying to just, and he said, at some point in time, you're going to realize that you're here to feed, not be fed. And then he just sat back and grinned at me a little bit, and I grinned back, but I didn't really get it until a little bit later on. I just sitting still and processed it. And I kind of went, you know what? I think he's right. I think he's absolutely right. Selfishness and self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our problems. And there it is. I'm manifesting it that way. But y'all, once you began to realize that every meeting that you're in, you're there to feed, you're there to help whoever you can, even if it's just saying howdy across the room, even if it's just that. I mean, the kindness is one of the things that I think comes with sobriety, and it can be amazingly powerful. There's going to be tens of thousands of men and women that I have forgotten in these rooms. I will never remember them. But the people that I remember are the people that showed me great kindness, who welcomed me into rooms, who helped me, who showed me where the bathroom was, who just, these are huge, huge things. And once you kind of click open that door, once you kind of kick it open, you walk into a different situation. It's just an amazing sort of deal. Guys, I want to hush up. I've talked enough. I love you to death. I got to tell you, if you're kind of holding the option of sponsorship at a distance, and coming up with reasons why you don't want to do it, well, God love you. I'll never judge you, because I'm that man. I am. The single most pivotal thing that happened to me in AA was when I got busy and started helping other people, and realized that my creator was in the middle of that stuff, and I didn't have to be sharp, fast, quick. I didn't have to be all the things that I thought I needed to be. I just had to be willing to do what I could to help some other person open to the idea of what recovery looked like. I always close like this because I think it's so important. Guys, I am delighted that I'm sober today. I'm kicking it. I love the fact that I've been sober for 35 years, but I got to tell you, I'm far more excited that a crusty old guy like me could affect change in people's lives in a way that I never could before, that I never could. There's something about knowing that you made a difference. Sometimes I changed the course of their life. Sometimes I saved their life. And that's some heady stuff. And few people, normal people, ever get to see that kind of thing in their life. And I'm in a room tonight with people that get to see it weekly almost. We get to see it all the time. Miracle after miracle after miracle. We are truly blessed. And I'm delighted that I finally woke up and figured out how to get here. And I'm sorry about last week. And I love you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Mars. I'm going to open up the floodgates and let everyone thank you.
Thanks, Howard.
Thank you, Mars.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mike.
Thank
I have
you.
1,000 questions.
Myers.
Thank you.
Myers.
Mars, I've gotten a number
It's
of requests.
great.
I've gotten a number of requests for the qualification questions, the sheets that you've been reading, the Paul Fisher article. If you could just send those to me, I will be telling people to contact me and I'll get it to them.
Okay. I'll be glad to do that, buddy. Thank you so much.
It's rather than sending it to 100 other places. We have about 15 or 20 minutes. Anyone have any questions you want to submit to Mars? Bev Rosen, you're first.
Oh my gosh, Myers.
Let's try and keep it to about 3 or 4.
Okay, thank you so much. I have a zillion questions, but I will try to limit it.
Bev, you got to unmute. I'm sorry.
There we go. Okay, my question is, where do you draw the line between just sticking to the steps and being there for them? I have sponsees that are like just out of rehab, one that just had 2 deaths in a row, one that's got, trying to pass her real estate license, and ones that, that's disabled, and they all have different needs. And I feel like I'm a crappy sponsor because I want to be able to sit with them, walk with them, not just tell them this is it. Include that, but help, boundaries.
I get it. Bev, that's such a good question. I mean, it truly is. Look, we're in a position to help as much as we can, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to try to do that. I asked that exact same question to Cliff Bishop, my long-term sponsor for 26 years. I asked him one time about it, and he said, Myers, let me ask you this question. When you get a call from somebody that you sponsor, what is your reaction? And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, what's your reaction? Do you say, here, I got to get this call? Or do you go, oh, mother, what do I do? And he said, the way you react, speaks volumes about how far you are in over your head. Are you overwhelmed by what's going on? Have you agreed to do more than you are capable of doing, which some of us are really good at? This is the reason, he said, Clifford would always say, if you just get your pride out of this deal and let them know, and then be willing to say, buddy, you're asking me questions, Hoss, I just don't know the answers to. Let's see if we can find you a professional guy, somebody that could help you with some of this stuff, because I'm not really sure. The other side of that, the other piece of that is, if my goal is to get the men that I sponsor to their creator as quickly as possible, what I don't want them to do is be in a situation where they're spending so much time relying on me for answers, because it puts me in a quandary there. I'm trying to be all things and I'm not, but I'm also standing firmly between them and their creator. So I'll often say, buddy, I'll be glad to help if I can, but let's do this. Why don't you go find a place quiet, maybe walk outside and sit for a while and just get God in this, and let's see if we can get a little clarity about what's going on. And it's amazing how many times, if I say that enough times, they'll eventually go, I had a long chat with God yesterday and I feel better about what's going on. You see, it's that kind of deal. So it's a good question, buddy. Thank you.
Thank you, Myers. Maureen. If you'll unmute.
Hi. Oh, I think I got it. Hi, Myers. Thanks so much for your talk. I really enjoyed it. My question is, I really liked where you said that one of the first things you do is qualify, pages 20 to 21. But then a woman I was speaking with, she said that she didn't really think she was an alcoholic, but she wanted to stop drinking, and she only drank maybe once or twice a month. And so I was kind of out of a loss because, tradition 3, I think it is, that says you only need a desire to stop drinking to be a membership of AA. I got that a little mixed up in there. So, I was kind of like, well, if you only drink once or twice a month, what are you calling anybody? Or you talking with your higher power? Are you willing to go to any length to stop drinking? And she said, oh, yeah. But it's kind of been like 2 years of drinking every month. I'm kind of like,
tough. It's tough. I think you have to define the relationship, the old DTR talk that they used to talk about in the 80s. It was just, you need to define the relationship. And I'll tell them, I said, buddy, I'll be glad to help. I'll be glad to help you with this kind of stuff. But we need to be clear here that I don't have a bunch of time to spend if you're not serious about this. If you're interested in getting clear of this, I'll do what I can to help. But understanding whether they're real or not. Listen, I'm 7 years sober, and I'm still questioning my own alcoholism. Am I an alcoholic? Because I just keep pushing back on it like that. And it's always fascinating to talk to people that have been in and out of our rooms for years, and then sit with them for a minute and ask them those questions like that one on page 44, and see if that you can get them to come to grips with what they really are. Are you really one of us? And so, and I walked around with a big smile on my face. I remember going home after that guy told me about that, and we were talking about it. And my wife, when I walked in the room, she said, what are you smiling so far? And I said, Londa, I'm an alcoholic. And my wife, who never curses, she goes, no shit, Myers. I mean, she looked right at me like this, and she said, I thought we knew this 7 years ago. And I said, no, So clarity is really important like that. But I just define the relationship and let them know I'm willing to be kind, I'm willing to help you. But I'm not going to, I don't want to get pushed into that. I'm your sober coach, and I'm your this, and I don't know how to do that.
Well, what I ended up saying, I'm willing to be a part of your circle of friends and reach out when you need.
Love that. Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you, Myers. Maureen. Al Green.
Thank you. I'm Al Green. I'm a real alcoholic and a worthwhile person. You'll find me described on pages 30 and 31 of the big book. My sobriety date's July 27, 1984. Marilyn Slater is my sponsor, and she has a sponsor. Now, that introduction just underscores some of what Myers was talking about the different culture. Say in AA, I got sober in Houston. I was there temporarily for 54 years. And my new sponsor, Marilyn, had 51 years of sobriety on the 8th day of last month. And Clancy sponsored her for 30 or 40 years. And she suggested that I go to some of the California meetings on Zoom. Of course, they're late night, but they're great. And in some of the meetings, that's the protocol for everyone to introduce themselves, is to give their disease, their sobriety date, and their sponsor. And the meetings in Houston primarily were discussion meetings. When I led a meeting, I always would read a couple of paragraphs out of the big book and marry the subject to the big book. That way, out of the first 164 pages. But that's not too common. And in the California meetings that I've been attending are very different. They're excellent. And I'm getting a lot out of it. I'm getting a lot out of the difference. And I don't have access to 2 stellar treatment centers like Myers does there in Kerrville, continuing the Texas connection here. But I've been to a bunch of good meetings in Dallas and Preston Group and all around Myers. But anyway, I'm in a little town of 1,500 people, so Zoom has been a godsend for me, in AA and a lot of other things. And I've been asking God to send me some people to work with. And this week, there's a woman in this town that I've known, knew her father, knew her 8 or 9 years probably. And she's been in AA, and we talked about it, but there was always a wall there between us. She never was receptive. I offered to help, it was just cordial and standoffish. She called me Thursday practically in tears. She's probably been around 10, 12 years. And so God answered that prayer. She had a sponsor. I told her I'd take her through the big book. And she came over and we started reading the big book together. And then the other night, another guy that's lost an awful lot called me. And she is following my suggestions. I don't know if he is or not. He's not called back. But I have stayed sober, and I really got a lot out of what Myers was talking about, sponsorship and so on. Thank you, Myers, and I look forward to learning more. No hooch.
Thank you, buddy.
Thank you, Al. Myers, we had a question. What is your home group?
My home group now is the Ingram Solutions Group in Ingram, Texas, which is in the middle of freaking nowhere, 100 miles west of Austin and 60 miles north of San Antonio, in the hill country. That's where Chris, my twin, is down here too. My old home group in Dallas for 28 years was the Primary Purpose Dallas.
That's it. I think that's what we were looking for.
Yep.
We got a few more minutes. Desi. Unmute, my friend.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. I'm Des. I'm a drug-addicted alcoholic. Thias, once again, I'm sorry I'm late. Completely missed the 1 hour time difference again. But thanks for hosting, Howard and Kathy and everyone that's made the meeting possible tonight. So what I did catch, Myers, towards the end of your presentation was working with ex-military guys. I'm working with, I'm ex-military myself. And what I have found is, it's kind of working with some real complex guys around battle trauma and PTSD. And I'm asking just to basically be able to reach out to you, actually, because I'd love some kind of guidance and experience, Myers. I've got my own experience. I've got the big book solution. I've got good sponsorship. I've got a good sponsor who's got a good sponsor. And I always kind of go through them gates. But to kind of get some direct experience, I was just wondering if I could reach out via Howard, if that would be okay, please, Myers.
Absolutely, buddy. I'm going to put my number in my email in the chat, and we can visit later. You bet.
Thanks, Myers.
Thanks, guys. Amy Catt from Houston.
Hi, Myers. Thank you so much. I heard you at the CETA convention, and it's just always such a pleasure to have you as a speaker. So thank you.
Thank you.
I learned a lot. I have a couple of questions real quick. Do you only sponsor alcoholics?
No, because I'm a dope fiend too. I'm also a member of DAA, Drug Addicts Anonymous, and so I sponsor dope fiends and drunks.
Okay, but what about me? I'm just an alcoholic.
I don't sponsor women ever, because women scare me really bad.
No, I'm asking you if you sponsor drug, like me as an alcoholic. I'm an Alcoholics Anonymous, right? Member.
Mm-hmm.
Good standing finally. I meet a lot of drug addicts. I do a lot of H&I that want me as a sponsor, or I approach them.
Oh, I understand.
Yeah,
I understand what you're saying now, hon. I'm sorry, I misunderstood
That's
you.
okay.
Here's the deal. I'm not going to let anybody struggle. So if I'm face to face with somebody that's in an AA meeting, I certainly honor the traditions. I'm not going to let anybody just sit there and collapse. I'm going to try to do what I can to get them hooked up and connected up on this kind of stuff. Let me be. I don't want to step on anybody, but I've spent years dealing with people who keep going. A drug is a drug is a drug. Listen, if you've ever, how do I say this? Because I don't want to. What I want you to understand is that the solution of how we get from point A, busted up person, to sober and kicking ass, that the solution is always the same, 100% of the same. In 35 years of being in these rooms, I have never, ever, ever known a drunk man who sold his wife for booze. I've never heard of anything like that. And yet in dope land, I hear that all the time. The depth of guilt and shame and remorse around most of the dope fiends that I've known over the years is deep enough that unless you are actually to get you a little drunk trying to sponsor a little dope fiend is one of the most confusing things.
Yeah.
It's just painful, because once they understand that you don't understand, they'll start blowing smoke up your rear, and pretty soon the whole thing collapses and it gets goofy. I would much rather, if I'm a drunk and I meet me a little dope fiend that I want to try to help, I'm going to poke around until I find another dope fiend that's willing to help them.
Okay.
It's a clear way to handle it.
Yeah. Do you have a good resource because I don't really know like the long form of the traditions, or a workshop or a worksheet or some source on the internet that I could get, start really learning the traditions?
Oh, you bet.
Through and through.
Ross Melanson, my buddy out in California at Mad Dogs Recovery, has got some amazing workshops on the traditions.
Okay,
Amazing.
Mad Dog. Okay.
Mad Dog Recovery.
I have that. Okay, one last thing real quick. So when I meet somebody, I want to read the whole book with them, so they know how to sponsor, right? But then they go, well, are we going to start working on the steps? I need to work on the steps. I mean, can I read with them and work on the steps?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. But
but not hold off, like read up to that point.
You're okay. I want to get them involved in the steps as quickly as I can. And then, because I'm always in literature-based meetings, we're always in the literature. And so we'll just read through that way. My problem would be, sometimes we get in parts of that book that get too drawn out. The first 9 pages of Bill's story, sometimes people are going, well, I got to get into the steps. Or chapter of the employer. You got 15 pages of that chapter, and they may not care at that stage of the game. So I think it's really important to get up. If you can stay with them and read, rock on. I totally love that. But I'm going to be working the steps with them ahead of that, so we can get them headed that direction. Yeah.
Thank you. And we're running out of time. We got Tanya, and then we can wrap it up. Tanya, please unmute if you wouldn't mind.
Hi, Tanya, alcoholic. I just want to say that I'm absolutely 100% honored to have the opportunity to listen to you speak. I'm 6 months sober. My sponsor is actually Bina, and she worked with me right away with the steps through the big book. She had me listen to speakers, including Howard, you, Chris, Sandy B. And I remember thinking how in the beginning, because I got a sponsor like on day 3, right? And I've been working with Bina ever since. But I remember thinking, my God, it's going so fast, all these steps, and maybe I need to slow down. But that works, right? It works. I'm absolutely amazed at how this program works. I recently got my first sponsee, who's on here, who's willing, who, we're going like literally, I just got her last week. We just met up this week for the first time. And, so I know it works. And being only at 6 months and having a sponsee is just, it's a wonderful thing. It feels good. So anyway, I just wanted to say that I'm so honored to have the opportunity to listen to you. And thank you so much.
Thanks, buddy.
Well, thank you all for coming. We finished right on time. Myers, as always, terrific. Thank you so much. I think we should take it out. Myers, you want to lead us out with a prayer of your choice?
Yeah, buddy. Let's just old school it with a Lord's Prayer.
There we go. Let me unmute everybody.
Got it?
Just,
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done.
Thy will be done.
Give us this day our daily bread. Give us our trespasses. Forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, the power, and glory, forever.
Amen.
Thank you, Myers.
anyone
Thanks,
wants any
Thank you.
information, just reach out to us.
Thanks,
How's
Myers.
everybody?
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. We'll see y'all later. See you,
Thank you.
buddies.
Howard, was this recorded? Was Myers? This is
Cheers,
Bobette. Was
everyone.
Myers?
Good night.
Yes, hang on.
Howard?
Yes, hang on.